The first time I voted for a presidential candidate was in 1972. I voted for George McGovern. I lived in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania at the time, and my first voting experience was at a wooden, some kind of wooden booth structure, very temporary structure that somebody had made for people to walk into this booth, no curtains or anything around it. And in there was a piece of paper. And all I had to do was make an X on this piece of paper. Very, very high tech. Um, that was my first voting experience way, way back. Since then, other experiences voting for presidents, some not so great. I certainly was very interested in the whole Watergate saga, was addicted to watching the hearings on TV and reading the books by and about all of the characters in the story. It was fascinating to me. Um, did a lot of protesting during the Reagan years, of course, and also in the run up to the invasion of Iraq. I have a memory of being at a protest against the invasion in San Francisco, and one of the speakers on the platform was Jed Bartlett. The actor who played President Bartlett in The West Wing, um, Martin Sheen. And one of my colleagues who was with us all, the late great pastor Jack London, when Martin Sheen came out, Jack, we were kind of right up front, and he was like yelling and screaming, like, "My pastor, my pastor," or, I'm sorry, my president," meaning, of course, that George Bush was not, not his president. Anyway, today is President's Day, which is what got me thinking about all this. Today's President's Day, and kind of a hard day to think about celebrating the presidents of our country, the presidency as an office, but it sure brings some problems with how do we have respect and honor for a president who is not doing the things that a good and honest president should be doing. Um, I have to say that one of the things within Christianity that has created some problems for us as we think about our political situations is a passage from St. Paul's letter to the Romans. I mean, we tend to have a lot of trouble with St. Paul, right? There's all kinds of things that um, we struggle with, but this is certainly a big one. And that is his admonition in Romans 13 to obey the civil authorities, obey the government authorities. And this passage has certainly been one of the most uh, talked about, studied, wrestled with, argued over passages in the Bible. And the interesting thing is that the religious right has certainly appropriated that passage as their justification for totally obeying the government no matter what. That you shouldn't be protesting, you shouldn't be disagreeing, that the government, the president, has been instituted by God. And so we should have unquestioned submission to state power. Now, there's problems with that, right? I mean, in the past, we can name problems with that. Say, for instance, in Nazi Germany, German Christians used Romans 13 to justify their compliance with the Nazi regime. They proclaimed Hitler as a God-ordained ruler. Sounds familiar, right? American slavery and segregation. Slaveholders in the South routinely quoted from Romans 13 to claim divine sanctions for slavery and then for Jim Crow laws. Um, Slaves were told that it was their Christian duty to obey their masters because civil authority was ordained by God. We saw it in South Africa during apartheid, that Romans 13 was used to maintain racial hierarchies and justify state-sponsored oppression. In our own American Revolution, actually, both sides in the American Revolution invoked biblical justification for their cause. British loyalists used Romans 13 to decry rebellion, while the founding fathers um, crafted a new civil religion that largely ignored the dimensions of Scripture in favor of self-determined liberty. So you can see that there's history there of disagreement over how we use the passage. Well, it's certainly being used these days by the right to justify everything that they do. But how can we look at things like the murder of people in Minneapolis and the terrible things that, I mean, we can go on and on about it. That really, do we really believe that God has ordained this? So what do we do with it? Those of us who don't want to just throw out the baby with the bathwater and throw out everything about that Paul wrote and say, forget it, it doesn't apply today. Instead, and this is my theory about it, that we have to really dig into it and find out what really was going on back then, that Paul would write something like this, because it's not really in line with other places where he talks about the empire and how the way that Christians should be living and behaving in the world, which certainly was not the way of empire. Can go into that a lot more, but it's clear. So why did he go off on this tangent about obeying government? Well, of course, with theological, biblical questions, there's always many, many theories, many ideas. But one is that, what was going on at the time? You had the church in Rome, the Christian church in Rome. You had Jewish Christians who still were connected to their friends and relatives and people back in Palestine. And it seems that there was some sort of nationalistic fervor developing among these Jewish Christians in Rome. And of course, Paul is writing this letter to the Romans, to the Roman Christians, and this is the thinking, that he was exhorting them not to get involved in this nationalistic fervor that was very anti-Rome. Not that Paul was opposed to opposing Rome at all, but it may be that he was concerned about their involvement in an uprising that would not be good. And so, anyway, that's one theory. I kind of like it. I kind of like it better than you take it out of context and just say, oh, you obey the government no matter what they do. Certainly not in these days, not in any days. There were a lot of things about every single president that we could argue about and disagree with, no matter what their party. Um, so today's President's Day. I can honor the office, at least in the office as it should be, not in the office as what is being made of it. But it can also strengthen our resolve to bring back what the office should be, to strengthen our resolve to honor the office and to honor the three branches of our government, which are being dismantled into this unity theory of the presidency or whatever. We have to resist that, and we have to get our three branches, equal branches back, so that we really and truly can honor and celebrate the presidency as the founding fathers meant meant it to be. So on this President's Day, not celebrating the current occupant of the White House, especially as he's ripping half of it down and um, well, you all know what he's doing. So not celebrating the current occupant, but celebrating the concept of the presidency and our system of government and um, committing myself and hopefully you to working for the health and security of our democracy. So um, read Romans 13 and wrestle with it for yourself, but don't take it at face value. We don't do that with the Bible. It takes a little more um, digging deep into it to see what was going to taking it seriously. As somebody said, I think it was Marcus Borg, we take it seriously, not literally. So, in all seriousness, happy President's Day.